I realized that last lecture was kind of depressing, and so I apologize. I realized I was too rough. So, and not that I want to take it back, but I want you guys, I'm just trying to set the stage of this issue of what we're going to be facing with soils. And so when we start thinking about food, this was the last slide of last lecture. So when we start thinking about food, and I mean, you can talk about many things that we're facing. We talked about soil degradation and erosion and things like that, desertification. Food is just another indicator of some of the things that we're facing. I put that out there because I want you guys to have to sort of set the stage to start thinking about, well, what are the things that we can do? What are the management what are the management strategies, ideas, characteristics of soils that we can be using to sort of overcome some of these limitations, okay? And so this is what we ended up with, the natural resources available. I mean, if we're thinking about food supply, the natural resources available, soil is one of them, okay? The technical knowledge and resources, it's infrastructure and management, but that's also the knowledge about the natural resources and how to use them, the management, okay? We need to have an understanding of the appropriate animal, plant that we can be putting onto this landscape and how we manage those, and what are the type of inputs that we can put in, as well as, we say inputs here, but also the exports that are coming off site when we start harvesting things, okay? Or both intentionally as well as unintentionally. When we have erosion events, that's in essence harvesting. Okay, it may be management due to poor management, but it's still a harvesting event. Okay, so that's sort of the backdrop. Now, when we started this semester, I introduced you as to the functions of soil, and the next two lectures it's all going to be about functioning. We're going to be looking at characteristics and the characteristics of soil and how they function as a way that we can manage soil. So in essence, we're going to be talking about 4 things over the next 2 lectures. The big premise is soil quality. You know, what are the and with soil quality, we're going to be talking about management. We're going to be talking about soil characteristics that we use to manage. And then finally, we're going to be talking about the functional purpose of the soil, what you're using a soil for, or you know, what its use is. Okay, now when we start thinking about functioning, I want you to go back to this slide. I have this slide in the lecture, but I want you to go back to these 5 sort of concepts. And the concept was sort of soil does, and it was like soil here, and then there were some arrows that are out from here. Okay, so soil is a water filter. Okay, it's a water filter and it's a water supply. Okay, soil also is nutrient recycling, where nutrients go and where they return. Okay, they're processed there. Now, a lot of that process has to do with the fact that it's a habitat. We talked about nutrient cycling. Nitrogen cycling, the entire cycle is biologically mediated. Okay, which means the organisms are driving that, which means that from a soil's perspective, to get the nitrogen moving, you have to have the habitat. Okay, it's also from a structural sense, from an engineering sense, it's a structural media. But also from a plant sense, it's a growth medium. Okay, those are the functions of the soil. Now these are the gross functions, you know, big picture type of stuff. What I'd like to do over the next couple lectures is sort of narrow in on these functions. But look at it from a sense of what these functions are, but what do they do? What are these key characteristics that control these functions? Okay, does that make sense to everybody? So that's me saying, this is what I'm going to talk about. Okay, so let's talk about what we're going to talk about. Okay, and to do that, we're going to be can you guys see that? Should I kill another bank? John Mark, can you kill another one? Thanks. So we're going to be talking about, for the next 2 lectures basically, is soil quality. This is what we're going to be killing off the semester with. Okay, managing soils for today and tomorrow is sort of my premise of saying, you know, starting this lecture. But the question first that you should be asking is, well, what is soil quality? Okay, and so there's going to be a couple slides talking about what is soil quality. You know, and there's certainly this issue of soil quality in a sense of sustainability, from a management sense, and from all these things that this planet is facing right now. Understanding soil quality means assessing and managing soil so that it functions optimally now and into the future. So it's not degraded for future use. Okay? By monitoring changes in soil quality, a land manager can determine the set of practices that are in fact sustainable. Okay, so that's sort of the premise. Soil quality is how well soils do what we want them to do. Yeah. But think about this. Unlike this question of soil of water quality, what is soil quality? Okay, when we think of soil quality, and when we think of water quality, we think of high water quality. We think of some sort of goal. We want to have high quality water so we can use it for anything. Okay, but when you think about soils, soils have a lot of different functions. A characteristic that may push a soil towards being good for one thing may in fact push a soil towards being bad for another thing. Does that make sense? So these characteristics are not necessarily mutually beneficial. Good example, and I'll talk about this later, I'll use this example later, but a sandy soil, okay? The inherent characteristic of soil is sandy. So what does that mean for water management? It's going to be good for infiltration. It's going to be great for transfusivity, the transfer of water. But how good is it going to be for water storage? Probably not all that great. So think about these characteristics and how those characteristics will affect a soil's quality. Okay? So the capacity of a specific kind of soil to function within natural and managed ecosystems to sustain plant or animal production, maintain or enhance water and air quality, and support human health and habitation. The question there is, what is that specific kind of function that we're looking for? Okay? Now, I've set this up, the stage, so that we're talking about food, but we can be talking about a lot of other things. A lot of my research is associated with contamination and food. This is just not my year with computers, is it? Okay. Please advance. Please. Okay. In other words, the whole paragraph is how well a soil does what you want it to do. Cool? Yep? All right. People have a lot of different ideas, and I don't expect you guys to read all of these, but people have a lot of different ideas about what soil quality is. Okay? For people active in agricultural production, it may be about productivity, fertility. Okay? For consumers, it may be about plentiful food. Okay? For naturalists, it may be about soil harmony with landscape and its surroundings, sort of the ecosystem function. For environmentalists, it may be that functional nature. What is this material doing for that environment? Or what is its role in that environment? So there's a lot of different views about what these functions are. Okay? What the goals of that soil is. Okay? What do soils do? I don't think we have to go through this, but in essence, this is what soils do. There's that slide right on the board. Okay, this is what soils do. Okay, so what is a quality soil? Okay, characteristics of a healthy soil: it's got good tilth. Okay, sufficient depth, sufficient but not excessive supply of nutrients, small population of plant pathogens and insect pests, good soil drainage, large population of beneficial organisms, low weed pressure, free of chemical and toxins that may harm the farm or crop, resistance to degradation, its resiliency, as well as resilience when unfavorable conditions occur. Okay, if it has a drought. I mean, you guys just got done doing pot studies. Okay, part of the experiment was how long you guys could keep your corn growing in those drought conditions or under low water conditions. Now, in general, everybody's plant croaked. But some of your plants took a lot longer to die than others. That's a characteristic of the soil that you guys created. Okay, now, if we think about these soil characteristics, soils have both dynamic characteristics and inherent characteristics. Inherent characteristics are those that's just the soil's natural ability to function. The example there was sand. If a soil is sandy, it's going to drain faster than a clay soil. Deep soils, another example here. Deep soils have more room for roots than shallow soils. Make sense? Okay? These are characteristics that are not going to change easily. And in general, from a management perspective, you are not going to be able to manage by changing. You're going to have to manage that characteristics. It's a sandy soil, live with it. Okay? Now, there are also dynamic characteristics. These are things that you can manage change in a reasonable fashion. A good example of this is the amount of organic matter that's in a soil. Okay? How you grow your crops, how you harvest, how you add amendments is going to have a huge impact upon soil organic matter. How you manage it is also going to have a huge impact on soil structure. The water holding and nutrient capacity of soils are often very much driven by organic matter. So if you can manage this, you can potentially manage that. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. Now, how do we assess these characteristics? Now, where am I going with this? So let me take a step back for a second. Where am I going with this? Why am I talking about soil quality? Any thoughts here? I set the stage is that we're going to be facing a lot of serious problems coming down the pike. Food being one of them. So why am I talking about these individual characteristics? Any thoughts there? Should I give the answer? Is this 9 o'clock, please? It's partially management. We have to figure out how we can face these problems in the future. So let's think about the characteristics of our soils that control these functions so that we can then manage these functions for the future. Does that make sense? Okay, so how do we in fact assess how these characteristics are performing or how these soils are performing? It turns out that most soil quality can't really be measured directly. You can't say, well, this is a good soil and this is a bad soil. You can say this is a good soil for rice, this is a good soil for building, this is a good soil for drainage. Okay? But you're not actually measuring a soil, you're measuring characteristics of that soil. So we're looking basically at indicators, certain indicators that give us an idea about how a soil is going to perform. Okay? Indicators are measurable properties of soil or plants that provide clues about how well that soil can function. Indicators can be both physical, chemical, or biological. Useful indicators are going to be things that are easy to measure. Okay? They're going to measure changes in a soil's function. They're going to encompass all of these different properties. They're going to be accessible to many users. It's not going to be this very small group of people that know how to do this. And they're going to be applicable to field conditions. They're going to be sensitive to variations in climate as well as management. Okay, that's what these characteristics need to be, these indicators. Okay? Now, I pulled these indicators from the Cornell Soil Health Initiative. Okay, this is the Cornell Soil Health Assessment Training Manual. And these are basically all different type of characteristics that we measure to give us an idea about a soil's health. Okay, this is not necessarily soil quality, but it's soil health. And there's a whole bunch of different physical ones, biological ones, and chemical ones. Okay, we're not going to go through all of these, but we are going to go through some of them. Okay, now, let's think about some physical indicators. Okay, some physical indicators that you guys know about at this point are soil structure, depth of soil, infiltration and bulk density, and water holding capacity. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys a question, and I do expect an answer from this. What kind of relationships or characteristics or features do these indicators tell us about how a soil is functioning? Any ideas? Let's start with soil structure. Good soil structure, bad soil structure. Platy soil structure, blocky soil structure, granular soil structure. Do those things tell you something? Yeah. Okay, what do they tell us? What kinds of things can they tell us?
How it was formed.
How it was formed. Water infiltration and root penetration. How about something else? Biological activity, granular structure versus platy structure, root infiltration issues. Okay, management, how you are in fact managing it. If you have a platy structure or subsurface, you probably have a plow pan in there. Make sense? Okay? There's a whole slew of potential indicators here. Retention, transportation of water, habitats for microbes, estimate of crop production, compaction, porosity, workability. Okay? These indicators are measures of these characteristics, these properties, these management goals. How about another one? Chemical. These are some that you guys know. pH, EC, extractable NPK. Whoosh, yeesh. I'm trying to talk too fast. What might these indicators tell us? Nutrient availability and toxicity. What else? Biological activity. What else? Parent material. Weathering. Biological and chemical activity thresholds. Plant and microbial activity thresholds. Plant availability of nutrients and potentials for NP and NNP loss. Good examples? How about this one? Some biological ones. Microbial biomass C and N numbers. Potential mineralizable N. Soil respiration. What might those tell us?
Water capacity.
It could tell us about some climate issues. Water. What else? What else? pH. I mean, we can measure that one directly. Nutrient availability, decomposition rates, microbial catalytic potential, repository for carbon and nitrogen, soil productivity. What's going on there? Nitrogen supplying potential, and their microbial biomass activity measurements. Cool? Okay, let's go for a specific one. Soil organic matter. This is one that sort of integrates a number of them. This is both physical and biological. And to a certain extent, I guess it's considered also chemical. What would SOM numbers tell you?
Sulfur activity.
What?
Sulfur activity.
Sulfur activity? Productivity. Soil productivity. Structure. Fertility. Water holding capacity, water capacity, infiltration. Cation exchange. I think you guys got most of them. Soil fertility, structure, stability, nutrient retention, soil erosion potentials. These make sense to everybody? Okay, so I've sort of driven it home enough. You guys sort of got it right. So the thing here is that soil quality is not an end in itself. Okay, we're not, the soil. I'm not really too concerned about the soil quality. I'm more concerned about the soil function, and the quality is telling me, in a sense, how the soils are functioning. Okay, the ultimate purpose of research and assessing soil quality is not to achieve higher aggregate stability, biological activity, or some other soil property. We use these characteristics as indicators of soil quality, but in the end, soil quality must be identified by how it performs its function. What is it going to do? Back to the big five. Sort of take-home message here. If you think about this, and you think about all the variety of soils that are out there, each combination of soils that are out there and the land use calls for a different set of practices to enhance those functions. Okay? Not all soils the same. And by this time, you guys know that. But now it makes sense. And why? Okay, so let's come up. Hold on. Is this supposed to be in here? Oh. The second half of this slide isn't supposed to be here. So what I wanted to do now is I've got 5 slides, and what I thought I would do is I would throw out some management. At this point, I think you guys are like, I get it. So what I'd like to do at this point is sort of throw out 5 different sort of management protocols these are sort of generic ones, but 5 different management protocols, and what the consequence of them are. So these are sort of take-home message type of things. Okay, if I go to a site, what are some of the things that I can pull out of my back pocket or out of my toolbox and say, okay, these are some of the things I should be thinking about from a management perspective. Okay, the first one is adding organic matter, and this part of the slide wasn't supposed to be here. Okay, so why do I add organic matter? Well, regular additions of organic matter are linked to many aspects of soil quality. Okay, and this is so how. Okay, well, if you guys didn't see this, don't look. If you guys didn't see this, and I said, okay, well, you have a problem. The answer is adding organic matter. What kind of problems do you think you would have if the answer was add organic matter? Nutrient deficiency or lack of holding capacity, lack of nutrient holding capacity. Not only am I going to be adding organic matter to add nutrients, but I'm also going to be adding organic matter to hold on to those nutrients. Okay? Sandy soil, for example, does not have high CEC. Okay? What other things might you be thinking about if adding organic matter was the solution? What? Soil structure, stability issues. Okay, certainly you add organic matter to increase infiltration, things like that, but that organic matter also will act, in a sense, like a glue. It'll be an initial glue for plants to then take over and anchor things in place, but it certainly, from a soil structure sense, organic matter helps with that soil structure, that initial holding of the material in place. Okay, aggregate stability and things like that. What other types of things? Any other thoughts here?
How we add a lot of organic matter because it makes the clay soil a little bit easier to till earlier.
Workability. I bring sort of the issues of tilth. Okay? Not only will it do that, it will also increase infiltration and it will increase availability of water to the plants that are growing on those clay soils. Clay soils really good at holding water, not really good at letting it go. Okay? All right, let's try one that actually I did do it right way. Okay, avoiding excessive tillage. Why would I want to do that? Well, tillage has positive effects. It does. But it also triggers excessive organic matter degradation and disrupts soil structure or stability. And because of the equipment, it can cause a compaction, both because of the tires, but also because of the drills or whatever that you're running through the system. Okay. Strategy here, why would I want to avoid excess tillage? Well, there's the answers. Okay. How about another one? Carefully manage fertilizer and pesticides. None of these slides actually worked the way I wanted to. They were all supposed to say 3 and then just that, and then the next slide was going to be the answer. But, all right, so why would I want to carefully manage fertilizer and pesticides? Well, fertilizers can increase plant growth, but and if I increase plant growth, what I'm going to be doing for nutrient management? You guys remember this? It's sort of counterintuitive. More growth means, in a sense, more nutrients or more nutrient storage. Because yes, I'm going to be harvesting, but if I return a lot of that biomass back to the soil, it's now going to be in a form that's not easily going to be leached from the system. Does that make sense? Okay. Excess, they can target, or in their targeting, they can harm non-target organisms, and they can pollute downstream systems as well as the soil that you're in. Okay? Manure and other organic matter is a fertilizer, but it also can be a pollutant. Start looking at the phosphorus loading on ag fields, the dairy operations around here. Okay? Another one, increased ground cover. Why might this be a strategy? Again, bare soils, the answer is here. Bare soils are susceptible to wind erosion and water erosion. Increase plant cover, reduce that. Ground covers protect soil from that erosion, but it also provides habitats. And the habitats go right back to nutrients. Stable soil goes right back into water infiltration. Water infiltration, nutrient stability increases organic matter, which will then increase water storage. All these nice little feedback mechanisms. It all comes back to what the function is. What are these functions? Okay. Last one, increased plant diversity. Why is this a big one? Okay, well, each crop, I mean, if you think about the architecture of a plant, each crop has a slightly different architecture. Sometimes it's actually rather dramatic. Okay, if I have dramatically different architecture, this architecture is going to reach different parts of that soil volume. And as a result, I'll have more impact on a larger volume. Okay. Also, we can think about this from a sort of a systems approach. Diverse systems tend to be more stable or more resilient to some sort of stochastic type of event, some perturbation. Okay? All right. We feel good with this? This is, yeah? Okay. Now, what I'd like to do now is open this. Come on. Let's show, there it is. All right, I have 2 slides in here that you guys have seen. Okay, now, what I'd like to do for the next half an hour, if not more, and we'll go into the next lecture, okay, is I want to show you guys some case studies. Okay, now these are case studies of both good things and bad things, and basically we're going to be looking at soil degradation from a lot of different management as well as non-management applications, things that are just happening in the landscape. Okay, and I want you to take a look at these slides, and we're going to talk about these slides. We're going to think about, okay, what are the things that are happening on this landscape, and what are the potential management things that we could do? Okay, does that make sense? Okay, Jean-Marc, kill like 2 more banks. Okay, stop writing. Okay, I just want you guys to be looking it up here. Okay, now we're going to be talking about management. Now, but we're coming from this issue of what's the function of this soil. Now, the function of this soil is basically we're using this as cropland. There's a lot of other things that this soil is doing. Okay, but from a management perspective, the intensive management that's going on in this landscape is about crop production. Okay, now, what are some of the things that you see on this slide that they're doing to enhance its functionality and diminish or reduce its non-functionality, for lack of a better word? Okay, go. We're doing a lot of contour stuff. You can see these lines right here. It looks like the slope is going this way. Okay, you see these grassy swales in here. They're basically capturing erosion. They're slowing down water flow through the system. Okay, it looks like there might be a little terracing in here as well. So it looks like there may be actually flattening the landscape, so they're reducing the angle of the slope. Okay, certainly, does that make sense? Okay, all right. I'm going to skip these. Well, you know what? All right, what do we see here? Eutrophication. Okay, a big green slime, probably duckweed or something like that. Okay, thoughts here? What's going on? Runoff. Nitrogen, phosphorus coming from upland. Okay, management strategy here is less here and more where the nutrients are coming from. How about here? What are we seeing? A lot of different pictures here. Let's start at the top. What is it? Trash pile, landfill, dump, a lot of different. Okay. Now, the reality is that dumps are there. Okay, we have it, they're dumps, we use them. Now, the reality is also that we probably put too much stuff in there that we really shouldn't be putting in there that have lots of other uses. Okay? But if this is what we've got, what do we do? Certainly, we can reduce the amount of stuff that's going to it. Okay? Now, Freshkills landfill in New York City, it's not active anymore. It's where a lot of the 9/11 debris went. Okay? It is a landfill that's on Staten Island. It is so large that you basically can see it from, well, you could used to see it from Skylab before it came crashing down, but you basically see it from space. Okay? It is a very large object. And it's a man-made object. Okay? It's now being decommissioned. It has been decommissioned. And they're trying to figure out ways that they can use this material, or this space, I should say, not the material. Okay. Thoughts? What could they do with this space? Okay, I got one example here. What are the thoughts? Yeah.
Oh, you can cover it and then grow grass on it.
Cover it and grow grass, a classic cap type of thing. Okay. Often those caps are integrated into something where you prevent water from getting into the system so that you don't have leachate coming out of the system. Often these from sanitary design, often these have liners underneath them. But even if you have liners, if you keep adding water to a system, sooner or later it's going to go over the liner. Okay. Granted, liners crack and there's other problems associated with them. Okay. Capping also has some other benefits. Any thoughts there? This, what?
It looks a little nicer.
It certainly looks nicer. You know, you drive along a road, you know when you drive by a landfill. They all classically look the same, you know, just sort of like very large septic fields type of thing. Okay. Now, this is not necessarily a sort of soil remediation, but you certainly, when you cap them, you potentially put holes in them above so you can capture methane and you can use cogeneration or something like that coming off of it. Any other ideas? No? Nothing? Go.
You could put something on it, like an air strip or something.
You could use it for a building media. Certainly, could be a structural media for something. Okay? Now, if you do that, what are some of the things that you have to think about? And the solution that they have here, basically putting raised beds and putting material on it to separate it, they have to think about this as well. Okay? And I sort of gave it away when I started talking about, you know, you can puncture holes in it and basically put methane generation. Settling and decomposition of the material in there. If the system goes anaerobic, you're going to reduce the amount of decomposition, but you're also going to increase the amount of off-gassing, okay? Non-CO2 gassing, issues like methane, okay? If that's the case, that stuff is going to rise. It's not going to be capped by the liner at the bottom is intended to keep water from going down. Gas moves up. Now, theoretically, you can put a geotextile fabric or something like that on top, but the gas is going to move up. Okay? If the gas moves up, it's potentially going to be moving into that, what the? Oy, oy, oy. If the gas, well, this is the next slide. How about the next slide? If the gas moves up, it's potentially going to be moving into the structures that you're building. So these are things that you have to think about. Okay? Let's move on to the next one. Great slide. Any ideas what it is? Location, China. Agricultural field, very related to this slide right here.
A waste facility on the other side of the fence?
Basically waste. You're looking at a trash facility right here. Agricultural operations right next to a trash facility. Okay? All these pieces of stuff that you see in here, that's garbage. That's not rocks. Okay? Take the next step. This is also China. Agricultural field, right up to here. What do you guys see? Any thoughts? This is not an uncommon practice. And this is not, this is potentially something like this, not quite as blatant as this, is going on everywhere in the world. This is basically smelter plant material. Basically, they run it out on right, and you're basically looking at smelter plant material. You know, they're just spilling it off the side. Nice little sort of esker they're creating. Okay? Right into these agricultural fields. A little bit closer to home. Any thoughts? Same process, two different sources. Anybody from West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Maryland, parts of the Carolinas? Mountaintop removal for coal. Okay, this is acid mine waste stream material. See the orange that's in here? This is mostly sulfur. Okay, now it comes out of the system, out of this system, it's anaerobic, it's coming out as reduced, which means the minute this stuff hits oxygen, it's going to be oxidized. When it gets oxidized, what's going to happen to it? Becomes very acidic, drops the pH. From a management sense, what is that telling you you need to deal with? Acidity issues. Okay, here's another really good example of this. This is not quite the same, but this is basically sludge material, or not sludge material, this is dredge material. This is dredge material from the bottom of estuarine systems, anaerobic systems, salt anaerobic systems, which means it too has a lot of this same material in it, the sulfur. Okay, this sulfur comes up, it gets spread as land application. I mean, they're dredging out the bottom of channels and stuff like that. They put it out on land. What is it going to happen to it? It comes in with a nice sweet pH of 8.3 or 9.3, if not higher. And within a couple weeks, down to 3.5. From a management sense, what are you going to be thinking about doing here? This one's actually easier to deal with than this one. Certainly because you have less material here, but why? What would be the? Why do you think? Or what? Let's go back to what do you think you guys would do? Any thoughts here?
Add base.
What?
Add base.
Add base. Add a lot of lime. Turns out in this case, because of the amount of material, you really have to basically stabilize this, prevent the water from coming out, and put the top, cover the top, basically like a landfill. There in Pennsylvania, I think there's an airport basically sitting on top of some of these things. They turn it into, they seal it. They have to seal that top because they got to prevent water from getting in. Because if water gets in, it will solvate the material, and you'd have this stuff coming out of it. Okay. In this scenario, because you have a limited amount of material, you basically expose this to rainwater and let the system flush itself out. Okay? Because of the amount of volume that's here, that's not really a solution. You're going to be looking at flushing the system out for years and years and years and years.
Are there any techniques that you can try to prevent the oxidation step, like cover it before this?
Most of it is like we do with landfills, some sort of sealing process. Now, you potentially also could move this to another anaerobic site, but you're not going to be, from a dredge sense, you're going to dredge here and then put, we can't do that anymore. Lucas, you had a question? No? All right, this is what, I threw this slide in here just so you can see what it looks like. A little bit better slide of it. Okay, here's another one. Thoughts here? What's going on? Slash and burn. Okay. Now, this could be slash and burn for a number of different reasons. This could be for agricultural, sort of Swidden technology. They're really going to be planting stuff in here. But this could also be clearance for timber cutting. They're actually going to harvest the wood for the wood, not harvest the wood for ash for the soil. Okay. It's not.
They're burning it to plant trees in it.
This one's potentially burning trees for putting trees in as well. They're getting rid of the slash and then planting trees in. Not in this scenario, but it could have. There's lots of different scenarios that this could be used for. Here's another example. They're basically burning to weed. Okay, so what are the consequences of this? Loss of nutrients, certainly, potentially gain of nutrients in the soil, but loss of the biomass nutrients, as well as, certainly from volatilization. What other potential outcomes might you have from this kind of operation? Certainly the organisms that are close to this surface are certainly going to be modified. Now, depending upon the heat of that fire and the intensity of that fire, or I should say the intensity and the duration of that fire, that depth of heating may not be that deep. Okay, certainly when you have this type of fire up here, this is a pretty fast burn. But there are cases out west where it could be an extremely fast burn, but when you get into some of these pine forests and stuff like that, because of the resins that's in them, in these plants, these fires burn really, really hot. Now, a lot of these plants are adapted to that. In fact, they're required to have a fire regime to be able to spread their seeds. But an interesting side effect with some of these pine or the more resinous plants is that we get something that's called hydrophobicity. The fire burns, and the soil surfaces post-fire become hydrophobic. Okay? When they become hydrophobic, you see stuff that looks like this. See this slide right here? Now, this is hydrophobicity due to a chemical. This is a pesticide application. But when I start having this happening on top of my soil, what is that going to be doing to infiltration rates? Dramatically reducing it. Okay, and if I'm let's use the example, I'm going to be seeding behind it. I'm trying to clean out the scraps so that I can put in trees. You know, and if I have hydrophobicity, those trees are going to have a serious problem. Okay, so yes, burning is a viable strategy, but you need to know how to do it, and you need to know why you're doing it. Okay, how about this one? This is a before and after shot here. What's going on up top? It's erosion of some sort. So we're starting to see gully type of operations. You know, something's cutting through this. Now, why that's happening? There could be a number of reasons. What would be some of those reasons? I need to get more water to this point. Okay? That means there's either something happening at this point that's increasing the erodibility of the soil, i.e. I've lost the vegetation here, or I haven't lost the vegetation here, but someplace upstream I'm seeing more intense delivery of water to right here. Does that make sense? So one of those two things, if not both of those things, are happening. Okay, so what are your management strategies? First off, you have to figure out what the problem is. If it's because of what's going on here, the solution is here. If the problem is what's going on upstream, the solution is potentially not necessarily here, but maybe upstream. That doesn't necessarily mean the answer is not here, though. The solution is here. Okay? Thoughts? What did they do in this case? Increased vegetation. Stabilize the site. And you can see that they stabilize the site not just at the cut, but you can see all these trees up above that are not there. Okay, I've got a couple slides like this. Okay, here's another one. This is actually something they're thinking about doing at Dillman right now. Okay, this is the solution. What's the solution? To figure out what the solution is, you got to figure out what the problem was. Okay, what do you think the problem was? It was probably an erosion event. Okay, the solution that you see are a series of sort of terraces that have been stabilized with vegetation. So we're basically probably seeing some sort of hill slope, either creep or cut or something like that. I have some more dramatic pictures of that a little bit later. How about here? What are you seeing here? Now this could be natural, but this also could be human accelerated. What are you seeing? A number of possible explanations here. Do you guys remember me talking about fairy rings out west? You guys remember what fairy rings are? You know, you go out west and you start seeing hills that have rings around them that go around like this. Okay, that's because the animals, the sort of animal operations, the cows don't do really good with steep slopes going up and down, so they tend to go around and around and around and around. Okay, well, this could be traffic issues. You could start seeing people moving through here. It also could be animals. Okay, a good example that perhaps not, this is not a really good slide of it, but sort of these hilltop or mountaintop landscapes. In Great Britain, there's a really large sort of, it has a large culture of walking. There's a lot of walkers. Does this sound familiar to anybody? And there's actually rules and laws about, you know, even if you have private property with people walking on it, they're allowed to walk. Okay, well, not too long ago, basically, I'm not sure what bureau it was. Basically, it was like sort of their Bureau of Land Management or something like that. Basically said to walkers that when you guys die, you can no longer spread your ashes at the top of these hills. Because with this culture, there was like, I love this spot. When I die, spread my ashes here. I mean, we have that culture here too, right? Okay. What was happening? Well, if people keep spreading their ashes at the top of these hills, has anybody been mountain climbing around here or something like that? When you get up to the top of these mountains, there's sort of climate issues that are going on. But because of the lack of soil and because the vegetation is sort of sparse up there, they tend to have a lack of nutrients. So if you start adding ash, this is a long rigmarole to a story, I'm sorry. Okay? But if you start adding ashes at the top of these hills, what are you going to be doing to the ecosystem? What is ash? It's fertilizer, right? So if you start adding fertilizer to the top of these hills, you're changing the ecosystem at the top of the hills. And so in Great Britain, they were having the tops of these mountains and hills were basically, the ecology of the systems were changing. And so they had to put in a law saying, you guys can't spread your ashes there anymore. So if you died before the deadline, you were set, I guess. I don't know. How about this one? A little bit more dramatic than this one in a sense. How about that? See all these nice gullies coming off of it? And these are definitely, you can see the agricultural fields that are in there. A little bit more closer up, or up close, okay? Here's some of these gully cuts. This is, I don't know if that's corn or Sudan. Gullies coming through here, slip faces. What's going on? Any thoughts? In most of these cases, you're basically looking at some sort of nick effect, okay, where the angle of repose, something has come through and cut it. Okay, now what that cutting is has a lot to do with soil management. Okay, upstream, it could have been a water event. It literally could have been a tractor that came through, or they could have been digging a road through here or something like that. Okay, thinking about the consequence of that management and what the upstream, in a sense, effect is going to be. All right, solutions. What? Cover crop, cover it to stabilize it might be part of the solution here. Certainly, we could have said you could have designed it better in the first place. But if that's off the table at this point, cover crops, what else?
Some sort of more rigid structural.
Yeah, you could go with an armor of some sort, gabion baskets, cement wall type of stuff. And we do that a lot with road cuts and stuff like that, where we really, you got a grade issue, you can't really design better. You literally have to go through this, so we have to figure out a way of stabilizing. Go. You potentially control the collapse. I mean, certainly we can excavate this out, or you can cut it back so you have a better angle of repose. You see that a lot with roads as well. Rather than trying to put some sort of armor in here that you're going to have to repair again and again and again, because this soil is going to want to go. Okay? So rather than trying to repair the wall again and again and again, cut the soil back, stabilize it at an angle that it will be stable at, and put plants in place. Any other thoughts there? All right, I'm going to stop here. We are going to continue this same vein of conversation on Friday. Come thinking about what the function of that soil is, what the characteristics that we're going to be looking at are, and how potentially we can think about what the function is.